The truth is, right now, we're wearing a mask of humanity, all of us are, and on the surface you can't tell who's from where or what their agenda is. But in truth, all of the agendas that we're seeing running, all of the things that are happening in our daily lives now that are going to become more and more in our faces as we go through the next 10-year period, these are all about politics that have to do with three primary groups. One are the Amifrandriconians, another are the Anunnaki or Anu Elohim races, and the third one, and they're pretty much the ones that are most overlooked, are the Guardian races. They figured they had us neutralized a long time ago, so there's not enough of us on the planet to cause a problem. So the fight that's happening right now, that we're watching evolve right now, has to do with a very ancient battle, a battle that was scripted in Atlantis to take place, but it was put on hold because of a stalemate with the stellar activation cycle there. It's a battle of dominion between the Anu Elohim forces and who are working that, those agendas, and the ones who are working the Draconian agendas. There's a third player in this, but they've always kind of been a part of it, and we'll talk about them when we get into the Metatronic thing. They're called the 𝑽𝒍𝒂𝒃 races. They were from a different black hole system, and they joined forces with the ones from Phantom. There's been a battle, a long-standing battle that started in Atlantis between the Attilan king lines and the Atlas king lines, and certain other versions of king lines that came out of both of those. It was like the two brothers that had a big fight, They were going to create a hybrid race together, and then they decided, no, we don't like each other, and we're going to two different lines. This is where you mainly got Major Drac versus Major Anunnaki. When the Olympian gods fell, and the heavy-duty Christian gods, Catholic Byzantine style, came back in, they had some beautiful churches. They made some beautiful things. And people involved on this level were very devout. They didn't know the bigger drama that they were being moved to be a part of. Most of them didn't. Once in a while you'd have an overlord incarnated just to keep track of everybody, put them in a pope position or something, so you keep track of everybody. But it shifted back here. The culture shifted back here into Draconian control. And the Knights of Gnosis, which had been the original raider Draconian Knights that came in and took over from the Grail lines, they became the Knights Malta. And what was interesting is you ended up with two divisions, primarily, and there's lots of little fighting in amongst them, so they'd splinter off, and this, the two divisions would, you have 5 over here and 5 over here, but they had one thing in common. This 5 and this 5 didn't like the other 5, right? So they would, work against each other. You had Knights Templar, which are one thing, which are Anunnaki-based. These were the ones that actually were doing the mythical schools, the schools of Isis, the schools of Thoth, the stuff coming up from the Egyptian mystical schools. And then you had the Knights Malta, who fragmented into various other things. I mean, right now, if you want to find the generations of these people, these are the people who started many nice hospitals and many nice charity organizations on our planet right now. If you look into American history, for example, a division of the Knights Malta that kind of went into more mutation than usual were the KKK. And it all started in Atlantis. It's all worked up through our god mythologies that we've been given the whole time. We have basically two competing groups. One are the Draconian ones that came up through the night, became the Knights Malta, Knights of Gnosis, Knights Malta, that diversified into various different, very old family lines in different European countries and different Middle Eastern countries. Right now what you're watching is a very interesting drama in the Middle East that has to do with some of these lineages that are working here. You also have the Templar Knights who came up in various other things. Right now their main branch is called the Freemasons. Their cover branch on the outside is called the Protestants. Yeah. Where you have, in the Catholic tradition, that's like the Knights Malta line has come out. So it's like, when you want to take it into politics, it gets really fun, too, in America, because you have basically bipartisan, you have your Democrats and your Republicans. The Democrats are the Anunnaki, and the Republicans are the Dracs. When we had the Civil War in America, you had the Yankees were the Anunnakis, and the rebels were the Dracs. I mean, it's been there. The people motivating groups of just regular people trying to be people. You have these controlling factions of, first of all, front men. They're the people that the people out here think are the leaders. And then there's the people behind the front men that are actually the ones pulling the strings and trying to make things happen. This has been a progression all through our culture. I just wanted for us to be able to touch base with this bigger history and this kind of big drama that we'll learn about as we go through, these workshops, particularly the all day and the ones that are like literally all day. I get like really intense on this and bounce around the stage and pointing at mylar and things. Where you see where those things that we'll learn about that seem like out there are very much down here. They're very much about what we're living here and now. We've had so much corruption come in here. The Bible once upon a time was a holy book. It was a piece of the Emerald Covenant, CDD plate translations, the Mahabharata texts. They took it and ran with it and made a story that wasn't even true. They tell us the crucifixion of Christ story. Christ was not crucified. We've gone through this in some of the other workshops. He was not. He ascended. Not because he died first, but because he finished his mission here and he couldn't do anything more in that time frame. And it was time to leave. He knew he ascended through the Ark of the Covenant, which is a portal passage that comes up through Giza, in the Great Pyramid in Giza. And they created a story, and they made Christ a martyr. They took some of his teachings because they knew that they were loved, because he had started to bring the Emerald Covenant teachings back into the civilization at the time. They took the idea of Christ, they took the history of the man named Christ, twisted it up into the history of another man who was one of their hybrids that was supposed to get back on, bring his people back into the Emerald Covenant and didn't. And they created this whole story, this whole Jesus, Mary, and Joseph story that was agreed upon by even the competing groups, be they, whatever, if they were Protestant or Catholic or whatever, it didn't matter. There was one story that was agreed upon. This particular biblical story, what do we do with what happened in the biblical times? Because for them it was a big problem. There was this guy with what they considered a big mouth who went around and he had his memory back and he talked about the Emerald Covenant and he talked about ascension and he talked about stargates and about the Templar and he talked about the times that were going to come when there was going to be a big battle between the fallen angelic races who were going to try to get the planet. These were the things that were in Revelation and stuff originally. They told you the whole story. Now they all coded it. Now it's all encoded to hide pieces of the history, just like the Greek things and the Roman things were coded. The mythologies were all coded. So we're in the middle of an amazing time period here, that if we understood how to interpret the history that we see before us, it would verify the things that the guardian races are trying to explain to us now. But it's such a shock to some people because we've been raised to be so dependent on a book that tells us about God instead of the Spirit of God as it moves through us, that we're afraid to let go of the props. We get so accustomed to the drama and the fact that we're on a stage that we lost touch with the fact that we're real beings that can be beings and take the costumes off and go home and maybe have a nice dinner after the end of the show. We've been on this stage and playing the parts in this drama for many thousands of years now, and it's coming to a head, and it's coming to a head very quickly.